explain myself.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of DGXM podcast with Rock and Dea. Today, we have a prince on the line, and I'm not even joking. He's an actual prince. His name is Omar, and he comes from the royal lineage of Dukagjinit. And what that means is quite historical. What it means is that he's one of the first and original royal families of Albania that have kept their lineage alive, even though they traveled and found themselves in different areas of the Ottoman Empire throughout that progression. So Omar is a Syrian Albanian from a royal Albanian lineage, and we're so happy to have him on the show today. Welcome, Omar.
Thank you. Thank you, idea. Hey, Rock.
So, Omar, what's it like to be a prince?
It's no. First off, princes are a dime a dozen. There are there's a lot of them. Every different family that's ever ruled any part of the world, their entire line is a prince. A princess. Most people don't use titles anymore. That's not a thing we use on a daily basis. It would be weird. It's awkward growing up in America. You have that conversation with your friends in like elementary school. They kind of laugh at it. You realize it's not a common conversation that's going to build any rapport with anybody, and you stop talking about it. Okay. You're trying to explain that to somebody in school growing up. They don't get it. One, your kids, and then you learn to just leave it alone.
Okay, that makes sense.
If somebody's interested in history, that's something you bring up. And really for like the last 100 years since World War I, people don't use their titles like that because it's kind of become taboo. Mm-hmm. It's kind of frowned upon, I guess, with most people. I think it's conceited or whatever else. So
when you order a coffee, you don't say your name is Prince.
No, Prince.
You just say Omar. Caramel.
No. I do have some friends that do call me as a nickname Prince, but it's just like, whatever.
Have you ever used it anywhere? Like, if you've ever gone to Europe or anywhere in general, have you ever used that title? Like, my name is Prince Omar.
No.
No.
So but in Syria, I'm called Beg.
Bey.
Well, Bey is the modern Turkish version of it, but as a kid, when I would go there, it was Abu Beg, which is the son of the Beg.
Right.
And that's like a term of,
Can you tell us your full name, including your lineage last name?
Okay, so I complicate it on purpose because I want people to kind of learn. So every time I've ever done an interview, like in Albania or Kosovo, and at the bottom, they always mess up my name.
Okay.
And I do that on purpose because it's an Ottoman style name, but it's I don't mind if people just say Omar Dukagjinit. That's fine, that makes sense. But there's Omar Adil Bey is the title, Bey Dukagjin-zade, and Adil means justice, and that's because in the 1500s my family, Mohammed Pasha Dukagjinit, built a mosque, and it was next to like the courthouse. So over time, people started calling that the Adil Mosque, which means the place of justice. So we started being called by locals as like a nickname, the justice.
Your family originated in Albania. I want us to take a step back and understand that.
I'm talking about
go ahead.
Part. So the Dukagjin-zade, Zada means son of in Turkish. We don't really use that part anymore. And it's actually, if you look at old maps during the Ottoman Empire, the area of Dukagjin was called Dukagjin with a K. They switched the G with the K. You look it up, it is. So we've over time have switched out. So Dukagjin is how we say it.
Okay.
That's just how it's evolved.
I've never knew that.
Yeah, so if you look at some of the old Ottoman maps of the area of Dukagjin, northern Albania, it's Sanjak of Dukagjin with a K instead of a G.
And
interesting.
Is that
why it just changed over time? But we know it's originally Dukagjinit, but we still say Dukagjin.
Is that historical Dardania or Kosovo today? Is that where your family originates from geographically?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Geographically.
Geographically, what portion of Albania would the lineage be from before they?
So that's up in the air. Like most historians believe, probably Merdita would be the original.
Okay.
Or lineage, somewhere around there. There's a dream of that area would be originally, but here's the thing: people like to call like just the Highlands Dukagjin. It's not in the historic sense. Everything from Liege to Prizren and past that, a little past that, is Dukagjin. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no specific area that is, oh, now we're Dukagjin. That's modern terminology. Mm-hmm. So
what
when I refer
what's
to
crazy
Dukagjin,
is
it's that whole area all the way up to Paya. It's all Dukagjin.
That whole area
yeah.
is kind of
Yeah,
what
that's
you're
the historic
referring to,
Dukagjin. You
and
can't,
that's
yeah.
why it's up
The
in the air.
Dreama, Lineage,
Mhm.
all the way prison, Paya, all that.
So when
so
did the family move from that area to Syria? How did that happen, and when?
Okay, so let's start with Prince Dukagjinit. That's the one everybody focuses on that. We don't really focus on that so much because we have history since then. But in Albania, that's what they focus on. From him, he had two sons. They went to Italy. He sent them off to Italy. He went up to the mountains to fight till his last breath. His son Nicholas, let's see, came back, tried to start a rebellion, didn't really work. And then he had two sons, Pragon and Leka. Pragon came back, and Leka came back. And by the way, with Skanderbeg's grandson, also named George. Mm-hmm. They came back in 1501, tried a rebellion. Typical Venice, they promised a bunch of military aid. A bunch of soldiers never came through. Without that support, it didn't really work. So by 1503, there was a peace treaty. All three of those members, including Skanderbeg's grandson, he had another grandson that stayed in Italy, joined the Ottomans. And it was typical peace treaty. You have to then work with the Ottomans. And from that, the Treaty of Zadrima was created. Treaty of Zadrima made Zadrima, instead of having a pasha, it was directly a timur, or excuse me, a wife of the Sultan. So that means like an endowment of the Sultan. There was 30 bridges that needed to be built. And then in exchange, the people were put under the control of the bishop, local bishop, who then was, rather than having a pasha in between the Sultan, the bishop would then be the go-between with the Sultan. So it was less taxes, still taxes, less taxes, so you didn't have to pay the pasha. And the Albanians got the right to carry arms, bear arms, which was probably set up, I think, in my opinion, the historic tendency of Albanians having a bunch of weapons on them, because that wasn't common for other people. They weren't allowed that. And then some trade agreements and stuff. So my family at that point, Pragon became Ahmed Pasha, who worked his way up to Grand Vizier. So we were in Istanbul in that point. 1514, he was executed. His son, Mehmed Pasha, who was the governor of Aleppo, at that point, he built the mosque that we're named, well, the nickname from, and pretty much doubled the size of the city. So people that aren't familiar, most people aren't familiar with the Islamic endowment, but the way it works is you build a charity. It doesn't matter if it's an orphanage, a mosque, a bathhouse, and then you build commercial property, and the commercial property pays for that. And you lump it together. And well, there's a benefit to it. It's like a tax dodge, because it's technically owned by God. You give it to God, but you can dictate where all the rest of the money goes outside of what you pay for. Like, so it pays for the mosque and, let's say, the bathhouse, but all the rest of the money goes to the family, the descendants, because in Islam, the first charity is the family. So we doubled the size of the city almost. 200 shops, 5 clans, massive. It took 2 generations to do it. So we still own it. We still own that. So this is why when people go, oh, prove it. We still own the damn property. We still own all the buildings. You know, so
at that time, it was your family, just so people understand, that took on the development in modern day terms of what is now the city of Aleppo in Syria, and almost doubled its size in that time period. We
still own about half the old city, 40% of it, although it's damaged right now because of the war. But yeah, and once
is there an Albanian influence there or no?
Here's the thing: like, there was a small Albanian community. Most of them live in Damascus. Most of the Albanian community live in Damascus. There's always been throughout the Middle East, at the Ottoman Empire, an Albanian influence at the highest ranks. Though people don't realize this.
Can you explain that? Because that's really interesting.
Almost every major city is going to have an Albanian family at the top, the pinnacle, the elite military status.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they were the army.
Recruited from Albania specifically to lead.
Well, Albania and Greece. Greece also had a lot of the Janissaries were pretty much at that point entirely made up of Greek and Albanian soldiers. The Agas, which were like the captain of the The Janissaries were almost exclusively Albanian for a long period of time until later on they became more Turkish as late hundreds of years later. But initially, like the admirals, so Ahmed Pasha or Pregon Dukagjinit, his part of the agreement, well, we're assuming it's agreement, but he got married in 1503, same year that the peace treaty was, to the daughter of an Albanian admiral, Sinan Pasha, who was married to the Sultan's daughter. So he married the granddaughter of Bayezid II, whose father was an Albanian admiral. And then Mahmud Pasha also married an Ottoman princess. And that's kind of how that went. But
so I have a couple more historical questions, and then I'll hand it over to Doc. I know he has a couple questions too. And this is mostly for clarification. One, what do you mean by own the majority of the city still? And ask you how your family left Syria as well. Can you explain what that means?
So technically it's an Islamic endowment, which means you donate it to God, but you still collect the profits past whatever the charity pays for. That's however it was originally written. So we've built multiple mosques around. We have one in Bulgaria, 2 in Turkey, 2 in Kosovo. They're all written differently. However, the person that actually wrote the endowment, however contract if they want it to go to feed kittens, the money, that's where the money goes. Supposed to. Every time though the change of a nation becomes something different, usually the government, like so in Turkey, we had 4 houses, 11 apartments, and 14 shops that were right on the Bosphorus in Istanbul. Turkey, the modern Republic of Turkey, nationalized all endowments. So if it wasn't a mosque, they pretty much took it and then sold it and demolished it. So there's hotels now where we used to have houses. Every country is different. Like in 1912, we lost endowments in Kosovo, the Serbs, and Syria, when it had its independence, it just separated the mosque from the commercial property. So it gave us a deed to our commercial property. Okay. So we own it now.
And you still outright deeds?
Yeah, but we still own everything. But there's so many family members that get a percentage that we can't even sell it because it's so complicated.
Okay.
I would never
too complicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we also had like 4,000 hectares outside the city. So it was like 10,000 acres.
Who were the last grandparents to be in Syria, and when did they leave Syria?
My dad was born in Syria.
Oh, your dad was born in Syria too. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I lived in Syria.
Okay, tell us about that.
For periods of time.
When were you there?
I have to give you a little background on my dad's relationship with his dad, which is complicated.
Sure.
It's fine. So well, it's a little before. So 1967, 1973, the Syrian government started to become a little more socialist because the USSR was influencing them. So like I said, we had 4,000 hectares, which is 10,000 acres outside the city, and what included a village. We owned the entire village, the people that worked for us. The government pretty much took the village, gave it to the people, the individual houses, and then they took chunks of land to build a military base, to build a prison, and they made a rule, really pretty much to weaken the old Sunni old families that owned a lot of the land, a lot of the country. At first, it was you can only have 100 hectares per person, and then at 50 hectares, like 73, they changed it to 50 hectares. So what my family did is every child got 50 hectares in their name. 5 years old, 50 hectares. So it's like 120 acres, something like that. So when my dad, he went to the military because it's mandatory in Syria. He did his 2 years in the commandos. He got out, and his brother was already in America. He had a trip planned to come to America just to visit vacation. And he went to his dad and he said, I want to run my 50 hectares. It'll be the farmland that we, But it was like 1,000 hectares, a couple thousand hectares, whatever. No, at that point, about 1,000 something hectares that we had, commercial farm stuff. He's like, no, that's my property. I want to do it. And his dad laughed at him and said, it's not your property just because it's in your name. I'm the patriarch of the family. It's mine. So they had an argument, and he went to America on his vacation that he was planning on going to on a bad note, and they just didn't talk for 15 years.
15?
So
wow.
Maybe more. I'm rounding down probably. So when he came to visit, my grandparents came to visit. They didn't come to visit him. They came to visit his brother who was living here. When my dad came for vacation, he just stayed. He just said, I'm not going back home. They told him, if you don't come back home, don't ever come home.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was like bad. It was bad. I think probably, yeah.
It sounds like a typical Albanian family. You can't get out of the house, you can't come
we
back
all
in.
have there's a lot of stuff like that in my family where the men are just bumping heads. But so they came back to visit my uncle, and my dad went to him, and they kind of this is like an old school peace treaty. They made amends, and part of their my grandfather's problem was your son's not going to know who he is living in America. So I'm 4, almost 5. And my dad said, okay, take my son then. Take him. So at almost like we celebrated my birthday a week before, and I was on a plane. I went to Syria to live there with my grandparents.
Wow.
So they at 5 taught me our family history.
Wow. Okay.
And coming from growing up, first 5 years in America, nothing's old. You go there and so there was our manager, the property manager. He would take me out, and his name Abiasar, and he would go around and said, your family built that 480 years ago. Your family built this. Your family built that around the old city. And we had like tombs. The princess's tomb, which is Mohammed's wife, who's the daughter of Suleiman the second, I think, something like that, or Salam, whatever, one of the sultans. And we would go to each shop. This was a trip for me because growing up in LA, it's not like, so I would come to the shop. I'm 5 years old. They would, oh, this is Abu Beg, the son of the Beg. And the owner of the shop would get up and give me his chair. And then go get me a Coke. And like, what's going on here? This is crazy. And the house was like a 12-bedroom house, 3-story, maid. It was kind of crazy.
You saw where the princedom was when you went.
Well, I mean, at that point, no, we're just big. We're part of the Ottoman elite. That's like and my family. The best way to describe it, we're like the Adams family.
Okay. So
there's
a whole family essentially in the city, and you were in Albania.
We're a bubble.
Okay.
We don't like socialize outside of a very small circle. My grandfather, I don't say nicely, he was an elitist. He would not let my father growing up. He would not let him hang out with friends that were not of the same class. Period.
Now, are you like the last of the lineage, or is there more?
No, I got tons of cousins.
Men.
Yeah. Tons of cousins. Okay. Well, not tons. I think so many people ask me this all the time. So my generation and older, it's like 32 men on our side. There's also a branch in Istanbul. There's also a branch of the family of Istanbul that we haven't talked to since my dad was like a kid. My grandfather, we haven't talked to them. So I don't know what they're up to, but we're not a big family. We're not a huge family, but 30 something plus whatever my cousins, kids, whatever they are. This is men.
And how long did you stay in Syria when you went there?
That time I stayed 6 months. I learned Arabic. I came back to America. I didn't use it. I forgot it. So it's horrible. But
you ever gone back?
Like my grandfather, he spoke Turkish, Arabic, French, and Latin because when he was growing up, it was the part of the French. It was a French colony, so they went to French schools, and they learned Latin, which is crazy. But yeah, and I speak just English barely.
Now, Omar, I have one interesting question because a lot of people, for us being from Merdit, where we say we originate from, a lot of people predominantly in the area have kept a Christian faith or are Christian. And originally, Catholic, a lot of the people, Catholic. Now, originally, people, when they hone in on the name Dukagjin were pretty much the first, I guess, people to kind of take on that with Jarskastrioti in the area. Where did that change happen where you guys were, I guess, now in the Muslim religion or changed? I don't know. Because me personally, I always thought that the Dukagjins, was kind of religiously were the same as me, and we never got taught the fact that they went south into Africa and became, primarily in charge.
Oh, there's a cat.
Well, so it's interesting to me of like, when did that change or when did that happen?
1503, Pragon became Ahmed Pasha. You have to kind of become Muslim with Pasha. Though, if you read so there's a lot of Italian records, a ton of Italian records. He was pretty high up in rank, and he used to get pretty wasted with the Venetian ambassadors. So I don't know how religious he was. He did that when he was. Come here. Let's say hi.
Yeah, because over at that time, they say the religious thing was more of just if you're fighting against the Ottomans, you became a Christian, and if you weren't fighting, or if you were fighting with the Ottomans, then you became obviously.
It was I don't know, his generation. I can't speak for him. I wasn't, I'm not him. So, but he was him and his brother and Skanderbeg's grandson you guys can look that up. People always get mad for some reason. They went up. George the second joined the Ottomans at that point, 1503. He had another grandson that family. By the way, all those families are still around. We'll talk about that, I guess, a little bit.
I like your point, Omar, that that transition, or not necessarily transition, but it happened in different ways. So it's not that everyone just converted when the Ottomans came. There were many families that were Muslim too in different areas of Albania. Not everyone was Catholic. And even before that, Albanians had their own religion, their own form of Albanianism, which was a form of paganism.
Some families will have one member convert and one member. It's no different than if in the past before that you had because there was always a rivalry with the leadership and the church. And so this is what before with any nation, there's the ruling family and the church. The ruling family and whatever the religious institution is, the balance between the two. So a lot of families that were nobility would send a son off to be a member of the church, the clergy, bishop, whatever. So they had that somebody in there,
that anchor.
So so I feel like a lot of Albanian families would have one son be Muslim and one just so that they were, and then over time those branches became two separate branches. But my family specifically, I can't speak on Ahmed, but Ahmed Pasha, or probably going to Dukagjinit when I call him. But if I had to guess, based on his actions, I think he was an adult when he did it. It was probably strategic, political. The fact that he set up the Treaty of Zadrima, which put the bishop in charge rather than a pasha, who knows? But over the generations, I can speak for the family on the history. I can't speak for individual members of the family on their religious
several hundred years ago.
But it wasn't more. It wasn't to kind of split that. It was just more to kind of understand, because I don't know how religion worked in that time of history. So I don't know how it is.
I think of Dukagjin, I think of the area and the tribes that are there, that are there, not necessarily the family. When I go there and it'll be, he's from the Dukagjinit family. They think just I'm talking about the area. They don't realize that the area is named after the family.
And that's why I wanted to clear that up.
Most Albanians have no idea that most of the families still exist. The Muzaka still exists. The Castrioti still exist. The Bolsha still exist.
So that's a good question. It brings us to the point that many people ask about: who are the families known as the Fisnik families, or these families that have royal quote unquote lineage in Albania? Or
there's been no effort to even meet with them from anybody at the government there. The people, I mean, every 20, 30 years, an Albanian historian will show up in Aleppo and want to talk to my family. Pops up. Really? Who knows who reads these books, who reads these academic papers? I don't know, but they pop up every once in a while. They've come. And other historians too.
Are there specific names that are well known? For example, like your last
one of the different families that still exist?
Yes.
Yeah, you could just look this up. Before communism was like, communism was like this bubble of a lack of information, right? But before communism, I feel like Albanian historians and intellectuals knew more about Albanian history and the Albanians outside of Albania than they do now. So if you read Ekrem Bey Vlora, his stuff, he talks about where the different families are. He mentions my family in Aleppo. The Bolsha are in Romania, where they were before communism. Who knows? Okay. They were well off. The Muzaka were in Italy, Musacchio, and so here's how you know when a family is legit or not. They were given a chunk of land, I believe, by a prince, of Italian prince, and they have a house there, and they still have that house. The Castrioti, they're called the Castrata Skanderbeg family. They are at least there's two branches, but the one in Lecca, which is the southern part of Italy, it's like an area of southern part of Italy. They were given like a chunk of, like a fief or something, a chunk of land, an area, by the Italian king at that point. They still have property. They still have their lineage. They're known in the Arbresh community down there. They're known in the intellectual Albanian community as well. But average people don't know these families exist because there's no desire, I think, but maybe the modern government or the modern political system to even highlight that. I feel like I've been told by historians that a lot of the governmental figures feel this is backwards, that focusing on this stuff is counterproductive.
I've also read some things I've also read some things now where they say even that the Castriato lineage now is even completely like veered off into being Italians now. Like they're whoever is there now is just they married off into Italians, and now the
Okay, yeah.
Castriato name.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Albanian rules on lineage are pretty like the Canon. It's very set, right? There's not 50%. There's not 25%. There's not. People use this term now. Oh, I'm 20. 50% this, 50. No, that's not the Albanian culture, right? You are what? Your father's family. That's it. Your mother is from your father's line and her family, her father's line. But the kids are from your father's line, right? This is the question I'm asking you. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
There's no 50%, 25%. What's that?
Is your mother Albanian as well?
No. But I'm saying is the point is traditional Albanian culture is male line only.
It's always the male line.
Male line. That's it. That's how it works. Modern feminists might feel differently about it. People that have modern ideas might feel differently about it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying traditionally, this is the rule. This is the way it's written. This is the way it's talked about. That's it. If people in Britain and France were like, oh, well, their kings married back and forth with the French, but they were at war the whole time. The children were not French, half French. They were British.
Male predominant. Yeah.
Even if their mom was a French princess, it doesn't matter. And that's how traditional Albanian culture works is, I don't have to tell you guys, you know this, but everybody seems to be like, oh, well, 50% or 30%, whatever. That's not how it's written.
We're speaking about something very specific, which is how lineage was accounted for, especially when it came to royal bloodlines in Europe, but we're talking about Albania specifically, and that's what you're referring to. So the 50% is something else in conversation, but you're giving us a
Somebody mentions their mother's side because that's good in conversation, and that does create an alliance, but you are your father's children. That's it. Your father's line.
I wanted to point out for those who are watching us today that are very interesting, because this is a good educational moment for people too. We mentioned a few things and a few dates that are important. You mentioned 1912 and you mentioned the Canon, and it's good for us to explain what the significance of these dates and these words are, so they can kind of piece together the whole story. 1912 is a significant year that Omar mentioned because it's the year that Albania became independent from the Ottoman Empire. But
more specifically, it's when Kosovo was lost.
And Kosovo was lost the majority of its territory in the north.
I was talking about Prizren.
Yes.
The wife in Prizren. So that land was lost.
Yes.
So all the endowments there were nullified by the new Serbian government. Yeah. Or I guess it was Austria, whoever it was.
Non-Albanian governance.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned the Canon. Kanuni ilek Dukagjinit. The Canon, which in Arabic, Canon is law as well. You have it right behind you. Can you explain what the Canon is and what it meant to...
I'm not the best person to explain this. You need someone's director to come up here and do that. But it's a set of laws. It was an oral history of the set of laws of what Albanians usually, at least in the north, kind of, it was the rules. It was the rule. Marriage laws, inheritance laws. I'm going to say these things have changed a little bit, but this is how it's written now. But when I refer to it, I refer to more of the norms of medieval times, which you kind of have to read the history too to pick up on what the norms are, like inheritance laws and stuff like that. That's why I tell everybody, read Muzaka from 1515.
You can tell Omar comes from northern Albania though, because it's like eerily similar in looks. We all have like a.
You literally all look like cousins. I don't agree with that statement.
I have my brother.
Like you look like you could be my cousin. Literally.
No. So my brother has a specific look that he's a big guy. I have never seen anybody that looked like him. The first time I ever saw anybody that looked like, I was at Sweden. I was in Sweden for a concert with Donna Finham and Unicado. I was there, and there was this big. So they had the line to get like for Vic to sign, like autographs. And at a certain point, they're like, okay, no more people. But I saw this guy that looked exactly like my brother. Like he's like 10 people back before they cut him off. They're like, this guy has no idea. I was like, no, Vic, that guy, come here. So I brought him up. I got him to take a picture. He got to take a picture with Vic. And to this day, he has no idea why. Because he looks exactly like my brother. Okay. Exactly. And Vic, because the guy tagged it, Vic's like, and I showed Vic the picture of my brother. He's like, oh shit. It's just like your
That's
brother.
Hilarious.
And then 2 other times in Albania, I saw somebody look just like my brother. So although we had that separation, yeah, it's trippy. I've never seen me look like my brother until I went to the 3 Albanians that look like my brother.
Sorry.
And what's I want to say this though, like my family has, although we're like a mixture, obviously of some Turkish and the DNA of like the Caucasus. We have no Levant DNA, by the way. So we didn't marry any locals, but it's all the upper class Ottoman families. But like my great grandmother was from the Topoli family, from Jerkastar.
Yeah,
so,
I remember you were telling me that.
Yeah, they have a branch that went to Istanbul. A branch of their family lives in Istanbul, and then that family moved to Beirut in the 1930s. Okay. So last time that, because I talked to the family in Albania, and the guy was saying the last time that they had any contact with the family was in 1932, when they were visiting from Beirut, and they were in Durrës, and they said that's the last time.
That's really interesting, because when I've been to the Middle East, in the Levant specifically, people that have roots from the Balkans seem to be very aware of it, and they'll tell you, but my grandmother is actually from Bosnia, for example, or from Greece, even from Albania, I was told, and they actually had records of when their family had moved to the Levant. So definitely that's super interesting. I want to know, what is the weight of the meaning of your lineage and what it represents today? What degree is it present in Albania in terms of decision making, or is it a historical emblem at this point?
Yeah, I don't even know where you're going with that. To me, it's just my
wherever
family
you want to take it.
Okay, so to me, it's just my family history, something I grew up with. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, which I've learned over the last however many years. I've learned that certain parts of Albania, it means something completely specific to them, the name, that has nothing to do with the modern family. I hate to say it like that, but they've almost created something out of it, you know?
Okay.
That represents them, and see, sometimes when people see the actual where like my family history since then, they almost feel like, oh, that's not it. That's not how I define Dukagjinit for themselves. So they have to reconcile that, or they don't. Whatever, they don't have to do. Let them do them. but I don't know what you mean by that question.
Did you ever, for example, see yourself investing in zakat projects in Albania, or
I mean, I've given zakat
kind of sponsorship
to Kosovo.
Okay.
I've given during COVID and stuff to people that needed it. I'm not going to invest in a socialist country.
You consider Kosovo a socialist country?
No. Albania is a socialist country.
You consider Albania a socialist country?
Work on that first. Yeah.
That's interesting. What do you think makes it a socialist country? Because some people see it as a very capitalist country, especially in terms of the rate of investment in business that's happening.
First off, I don't care. People have advised me, don't talk crap about the government. Like, I would never talk crap about the Syrian government. That's no. But the people said don't really say anything bad about the Albanian government. So I'm gonna leave it. Just say I don't feel it's at the place where foreign investors would even invest there. Like, they have a huge land problem where people, like 6 people holding the deed to the property type of situation. But beyond that, I don't feel that there's much respect from the government for the history anyways. I really don't. I don't see it. We
really appreciate you sharing your genuine perspective, by the way, and we do recognize this is something that comes from you and from your viewpoint, and our viewers understand that as well. So feel free to acknowledge what you want to.
I had a meeting at the Ministry of Culture a couple trips ago, and they're all architects. I mean, culture means a lot of things to a lot of people. Ballet is culture, right? Modern art is culture. Not to me. I'm thinking history when I went in there, but they didn't seem to care anything about history, really. It was, I went there to offer to repair, like, the ticket booth in the Castle Village was broken. I went there to fix it, pay for that, and they didn't seem that interested. It's still broken.
Do you think they're just content because now since 1912 they're like, all right, we got our country, we got whatever, let's just.
I don't think most people in the government care about the old. So there was, okay, now
because like with Kosovo,
there was this.
Sorry.
Enver Hoxha was trying to push this modern Albanian that had nothing to do with the Albanians outside of it, and had nothing to necessarily do with, especially the Ottoman history, but history in general. It was more nationalism, a little bit of that, but a modern Albanian, and I feel like that's still continuing.
Because with Kosovo, you can see they're trying to find all their history.
Different. Yeah, that's a way different situation there. I'm friends with a couple people in the government there. Those people are way more open to history and talks about history and that sort of thing.
But do you feel that happens because of the whole situation with Serbia? So we kind of have to prove our, significance in the area, or, like I feel like Albania doesn't have to prove anything, whereas like Kosovo does.
They're a brand new baby and they're absorbing everything. It's like they're fresh. Albania's been around. Corruption's pretty deep, right? It's been established already. Yeah. Well, wait, I'm talking crap about I shouldn't talk crap about the government.
It's all good.
But that gives me
it's your opinion.
Or juncture to also contest you on the idea about history and the importance of history in Albania. And, it's unfortunate you may have come across people like that, but I've had the fortune of growing up in Albania for certain portions of my childhood, similarly to how you were sent back to Syria to kind of absorb the culture. And so meet people there that are active in the history scene or help, the local
I think the people want their history. I think the people want their, I don't think they're taught their history, by the way.
There are incentives with the Ministry of Culture to hear what the diaspora has to say. And maybe this is a good outlet to point out, hey, I went there, made a point about something important. It wasn't heard. What can be done differently? Because Albania is also a post-communist country, which is still developing after that era, after a very serious civil uprising that kind of dismantled the country during anarchy in 1997, 1998, and being under a regime of development through different perspectives leading up to what it is today. But there is an effort to understand and truly intellectualize the history of what happened and the different perspectives that come across from it. And if you were to make a notion of understanding what it means to have royal bloodlines or lineage in the history of Albania, I think there's people that would be deeply interested in it and preserving it as well. So let's not think that it's impossible. I'm happy to help you as well.
I've just been slightly disappointed with the interactions from the couple.
That's fair. That's completely fair.
And that's why I've taken interest.
Backwards, and it's not progressive to look at the old families and that sort of thing. I think the people are interested in it. I also think that the educational system there is teaching them still the communist era version of history. They haven't worked on upgrading that, because Albanian history is not just in the country of Albania. It encompasses that area, but it also encompasses much of the Middle East and almost if you look at the National Museum in Tirana, you go there. And have you been?
I have many times.
Okay. So great. You'll notice there's only a couple time periods mentioned.
That's very true. It's very limited.
Massive chunks. There's you walk through and you're like, okay, well, there's some Illyrian stuff, a little bit of Roman stuff, Bulgarian invasion, not there. Serbian invasion, not there. I get that. Okay. Byzantine stuff, not there. And then you'll see some of the medieval stuff. Okay, so it's the Illyrian, a little bit of Roman, medieval, you skip in 500 or whatever years, and medieval stuff, and then you skip the entire Ottoman area. It's nothing. There's nothing until the Albanian awakening or Albanian Renaissance. You'll have those Albanian figures. And then they'll have an Arbresh area, which is like the costumes and stuff, and you have an area for Zog now.
When were you last at the museum that you saw this?
Year and a half ago.
Year and a half ago. So even up until this point, there hasn't been an incentive to drive a bigger picture of.
I had a personal tour with the guy that worked at the museum, and I kept giving him crap. I'm like, "Where's this part of it? Where's this part of it?" He's like, "I know."
What's your suggestion for
the museum? Is not subjective. You can't just say, "I like this part of history, and I don't want to talk about this part of history."
Okay.
It's all relevant. It created what it is now. It created you. It created everybody watching this. All the history, good and bad, whatever you want to say, it created you. So you have to talk about it all.
And this is why I asked you.
I don't like that part.
And this is why I asked you more of the religious question at the beginning, because I get a lot of people that, because I am from Erdit, they'll say, "This guy's Dukagjin, isn't he this? Isn't he that?" A lot of people don't understand. We've gone into Africa, we've gone into Turkey, we've gone into the Middle East, we've gone into other parts of Europe and have taken leadership roles, become founders of certain countries, Like you're
let's
saying
talk
now.
about that.
So,
Let's talk about that.
and this is the history where I feel like should be talked about in Albania as well too, because the Albanian history, like you said, does not have to be just in Albania. We've done so much across the world. I feel like Albanians need to know all of this history because we have very smart people that have been, you know, across every platform, presidents, everything, and it makes me sad too that not everybody knows this.
Well, because this is a leftover from the communist Albania, which was a bubble, which was what it really was. It didn't let people travel outside. It also controlled all the information that people were learning. And I've talked to historians. I'm lucky enough that I've been able to talk to a lot of historians, and they were saying that they really didn't even want to teach Albanian history outside of Albania, like in Kosovo. And one historian's like, you cannot separate Kosovo from Albania when you talk about history, because they didn't want to, in that era, they didn't really want to involve themselves with any of the situation outside of it. Which you can't do that. But Albanians love Alexander the Great, right? Love Alexander the Great. But all throughout history, we've been the soldiers. We're military people. It's the culture. So the Romans have recruited, in the Eastern Byzantines recruited, the Ottomans recruited. Everybody has recruited people from that area, whether you call them Albanians or whatever you want to call the people in that area. As different times it's been called different things. As soldiers, because we make good soldiers, and not just soldiers, we make good military leaders. The thing is about military leaders is they make good rulers, and like the last royal family of Egypt, Albanian family. The Gika family in the ruled Romania, Albanian family. There's the Lupu family and the Duka family in Romania, Moldova, that were Albanian families. We talked about different like
Tunisia, Egypt, all these places.
The first president of Tunisia was from an Albanian family, though they weren't really connected to their ethnicity, but they were originally from an Albanian family, because the Ottoman Empire took Albanians as military and they put them all to rule. Like my family, we weren't just in Aleppo. We were viceroy of Egypt. They moved us to Bulgaria, and it's like when you're in the military, they move you around, but you still have your home base, right? Our home base was Aleppo, but we were the governor of Razgrad, Bulgaria. Thessalonica. One of them for at least a year or two was in Serbia. Was the Pasha of Serbia.
It was the Ottoman Empire, so it makes sense.
Yeah, they just moved around. They moved all over the place, and some of these families would stay. They'll stay in Cairo. Cairo used to be a huge hub for Albanians all the way up to 1952.
That's true. Actually,
there was an Albanian language newspaper in Egypt up until, and when they kicked out the royal family, the Albanians left with them. They didn't go back to Albania because it was communism. They went to Europe. They went to America.
I agree.
There's people watching this that their grandparents were from Egypt that are Albanian.
To jump on that point, it's very recent history too. My grandparents migrated to Egypt. My great grandfather, actually, with his entire family and his brothers, established business, established a home base there, and then returned back to Albania, Chamarija at the time, because they wanted to live closer to, Albania proper. But they've migrated. On the point, before the 1940s. So this was 1920.
So this is run by Albanians at the time. That was an Albanian king.
And the interesting thing about culture, and we've mentioned culture several times, it's good to point out that culture is not stagnant, okay? Culture is a verb that is supposed to evolve and change and be added onto. And I think we've identified so many things that we can contribute to throughout this conversation that can be done better. It is very true that during communism, Albania was a bubble. It was the North Korea of Europe. No one could get in. No one could get out under, maybe very special circumstances. And after that, it's an awakening of understanding, what does it mean to be in this international system as an Albanian? Oh, we're not just limited by these borders. We've been expanding and migrating throughout a huge diaspora in a history that's very, it's impactful, because Albanians were military, as you said, and national leaders, and they were placed there through the Ottoman Empire. But what does that mean for us today? How do we collectively understand our identity, knowing that Albania is a place that has one of the largest diasporas in the world? It's Albanians, also Armenians, that are also very connected to their home base back abroad. And
Armenians have a similar history, actually, in that way.
Yeah. And one of it is having these conversations and for you to be able to come on the show and say, hey, listen, we have this history. This is where we were. This is what I'm able to preserve and to speak about it. So what motivates you to keep telling your story, finding more facts? And for those of you that don't know Omar, he is a whole university in a person. You ask him something, well researched, well read, and he can debate any professor, in my mind, at any university when it comes to history and facts and understanding how those make logical connections today. So why do you keep doing it, Omar?
So I mean, I've explained this to Rock. So the Armenians are a great example. They were kind of in the same situation. They were communists. A lot of them lived in Turkey. They had a genocide. They were pushed out of an area that they were inhabited, and they've had to kind of do the same thing and rebuilt. And I don't feel like the Albanians are doing that to the degree that we could. And I think part of the reason, and I hate to say this, but ethnic nationalism is limiting. So if we go back to the traditional, and you say the male bloodline is an Albanian, then because otherwise it's based on language, and I think that's limiting because a lot of diaspora don't. The Arbresh, not all of them speak Albanian. Some of them do. Some of them are very little villages, but a lot of them don't. Turkey has millions of Albanians, millions.
Very true.
And you go there, and they'll tell you they're Albanian, but they don't speak Albanian.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start limiting and saying, okay, this is the narrow definition of what Albanian is, and it's more modern definition of ethnic nationalism, which is based on language, which is not traditionally how it's based on. It's based on bloodlines and your male line. Then you have a very small population. And if you start only learning Albanian history that just happened in the country of Albania, rather than, I don't like ethnic nationalism. I think Albanian exceptionalism should be the thing that's taught.
Can you explain that, please?
Yes, I can. Based on the fact that Albanians for small people, have done an amazing amount of conquests, military conquest and leadership. Ruled Egypt, ruled Romania. Really, the Muhammad Ali Pasha, he ruled all the way up to almost up to Turkey and Syria, all that area. Almost every major city in the Ottoman Empire at one point was run by an Albanian Pasha. The Pashaliks that were in actual Albania, that was an exception. The Ottomans actually let the Albanians rule themselves. They didn't let people do that. People go, oh, the Pashaliks, they were working for the Ottoman government. They didn't let people do it. They would take somebody from somewhere else and put them in charge. That didn't work in Albania. They're tough people. So that sort of, look at all the stuff we've done. If people in Albania learned that a family from Albania went and then ruled Romania, huge area, the Geka family, for generations, anything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what you came from. So I think exceptionalism, Albanian exceptionalism, should be taught. And in the world we live in now, oh, that's conceded, that's whatever. But that all the things that have outside of Albania, not inside and outside, should be taught. Not just a very narrow set of history. And when you just sort of say, well, this area and these people that still keep the language, no, everybody that has identified as Albanian. So like my family history, if you read it in the Ottoman era, there was always, they mentioned my family from Albania. Doesn't matter the generation, doesn't matter how long. We always kept that identity. And I want to actually talk about something, because I've done a couple interviews, and two of them I did. So Mema, I like the guy, nice guy. That interview, they ended up, when they were talking about, they're like, oh, he discovered he was a Dukagjin by doing research. That was a spin. That was not it. I grew up with this.
Yeah.
And then I did one on Dukagjin TV or whatever it was. And the guy knew nothing about history. I don't expect him to, TV hosts, sure. They know pop culture. And they asked, he didn't know what questions to ask. And at the end, they're like, the editor or whatever, they're like, oh, he discovered his Dukagjini from a DNA test. No. I grew up with this. But I think they have to relate it. They have to make it relatable, because it's relatable. These shows are entertainment. They're entertainment. So the average person has to be able to associate with that. Oh, he looked at his records and found that. No, I went through 10 years of looking through records. First off, my interactions with Albanians mostly was online. And Albanians in person are nice. Albanians online, not so much, right? So I expected arguments.
Mm-hmm.
So I pushed this trip off for like 10 years. I wanted every record, so I would win every argument. And then I went there with literally a stack of records like this. And everybody's like, oh, cool. That's cool. So that's why I have the knowledge I do, because I expected pushback.
Right.
And some people that push back, they don't care. They don't care what you have. They're just like, I don't care. I'm not looking at it. I don't read it. I don't whatever. But
What
the average
I
person is like, oh, that's great.
would be interested in, and maybe if you have time and desire to do this, would be a collection of books that you're able to gather and produce in collaboration with other people that have a sincere interest in the topic and history. They don't necessarily always have to be Albanian, but they can be specialists in other regions that were covered by the Ottoman or where Albanians went to provide a historical perspective that can be referred to, not just of your lineage, but to provide that
everybody space.
Yeah, everybody
I've tried.
Collect it, Omar, in a book.
Yeah, I've tried. Nobody, look at, first off, you want to read Albanian history from the medieval era, you cannot read it in Albanian. It's written in medieval Italian, it's written in Latin, it's written in Ottoman Turkish. So when let's see here. Oh, let's find some stuff.
Yeah, because you've sent me stuff written in Italian.
That's 500 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in Albanian. Somebody has to translate this stuff, right? So, what do I do with all my stuff? I didn't expect to do this part.
But yes, exactly. Even if you just start with the history of your lineage and how you ended up in Syria and how from there you ended up in California with an interest in your history as well, would be very very powerful.
Read it in Italian, medieval Italian.
Is that Latin or is that Italian?
That's medieval Italian.
I think it's Italian.
I don't even think that Italian's spoken anymore at all, right?
No, I had an Italian buddy read it, but so like the important books, I think this is
Vita di what? The life of who? Of what?
Skanderbeg.
Skanderbeg. Okay. So what would be in your perspective, what would be the best book for somebody to start off with to try to learn some Albanian history?
This is a great question. This is a great question. You don't need a book. You don't need a book. Actually, I think today was the anniversary of the guy's death. It was his name. What's his name? I'm drawing a blank. But AlbanianHistory.net.
Okay.
Go there. Robert Elsie or something. That was the guy. He translated a bunch of stuff. Go AlbanianHistory.net.
Okay.
Tons of stuff there. It'll take you about a month to read it. If you read that, it's in English. I think some of it's in Albanian, but he just took books and translated the parts that mention Albanian. You go top right corner, and there's different history time periods. You can read Muzaka there. You have to read if you want to understand medieval Albania. Muzaka and Barletti's, both his books.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what you've sent me, and I read
several times.
Yeah.
So I think they're really important to look into. I wanted to ask.
They're not necessarily Barletti's are stories, but Muzaka and stuff. Muzaka is talking about inheritance, if you wrote it for his kids, and he's trying to use he's trying to use an Italian inheritance over Albanian inheritance rules, assuming that Italy, Venice took over and won the war, and basically because Albanian inheritance laws are completely different than Italian. So let's say Rock has two sons. One has a daughter, one has a son. The daughter wouldn't get her inheritance. It goes back up and then down to the cousin. That's how it works. So Italian, it would have
Albanian inheritance laws. Let's clarify that.
Old Albanian inheritance laws, medieval one. So so he was trying to say like, okay, this family died out. Well, it would traditionally Albanian, it would go up and then across. Whereas he was like, okay, well, we married from that family, so we should get that. Okay. But it sets the tone. It gives a lot of information on that. But
Omar, if someone were to ask you, well, it's fantastic, you're collecting this information, telling your stories, but what's the point of it all? Because royal bloodline.
I asked myself that too.
Relevant. What would you say?
I mean, I feel like if you don't have history, you have no roots in the area. That's it. Or you have no roots in the world. Obviously, like in Kosovo, there's a dispute, with the Serbs.
Yep.
The Serbs claim my family. The Serbs claim the Kastroti. The Serbs claim the Bolsha. All three of those families still exist. By the way, you mentioned the Kastrota, Skanderbeg family in Italy. They still claim they're Albanian. They still. I've talked to them. Loris Kastrota is the head of their family over there. He's done a couple of interviews. He's never done anything on camera because these things are tough. But he's done some interviews. You can read them online. they still say where they're from. So, but the Serbs claim all three of those families. The thing about history, and this is important, and people, if history was a person, it would be an elitist with a morbid sense of morbid fascination with like destruction, like of this, because that's what history records. It records horrible things and wealthy families. That's it. If you're important in history and your grandson is not wealthy, they don't record him. It's just how it works. That's how, like, tax records, land records, that's how history actually keeps track of bloodlines. So in talking about Kosovo, like, the only people that were really recorded in the medieval times were the ruling families. So if the Serbs claim those ruling families and the Albanians claim, then it's word of mouth. It's my word against your word. But you have those families that still exist. But not only that, if obviously Skanderbeg's come up, and I've sent you stuff where, like, his letter to the Prince of Toronto in Italy, where he calls himself Albanian. I've sent you the stuff that but his mother being from the Zaka family.
Yep.
But when people don't know this stuff, if they don't have, like, this is where he says this from 15 whatever, then it's like it's a word of mouth. He said, she said type of stuff, and
it's like you're letting somebody just walk over your history if you're not fighting against
exactly it. Somebody else can claim it, and propaganda becomes huge. And the problem with the Balkans is propaganda has been such a huge part of not just politics but history in the last 70 years.
And the
like Serbian historians, you go back to the 1930s, they did not claim my family. They never did. It's only recently that they started claiming my family as being Serbian, because if you claim my family, then the western half of Kosovo was never ruled by Albanians. So that is
you make an excellent point, Omar, on that front. It's not just a matter of conversation or opinion. Having an understanding that is, valid and researched and accurate really can help prevent future conflict and can prevent baseless claims over territory that, as you know, there's a history of in that region. So
wars are going to happen, but it's the outside people. It's the non-Albanians, non-Serbs that are going to go, oh, well, they're saying this, and they're saying, oh, well, it's a dispute between the two. No.
It's going to be the other countries.
Yeah, it's really the public opinion from outside the rest of the world. And if you have all your history in order, which Albanians don't, they haven't spent the time to put it all there. It's there, like the records are there. The Ottoman archives are full. The different, Dubrovnik, the archives are full. The Venetian archives, they have stuff, but nobody has sat there and they've translated some of it, but most of it hasn't been. There's no government money. There's no money in doing it. There's no incentive for historians to go translate these things. The Brock, if you remember a couple years ago, I sent you the stuff on Skanderbeg's mom, which I found in the archives of Naples, right? Page 17, second paragraph, whatever, Angelo 1551. And I went around to historians and here's a copy of it. Here's a copy of it. Here's a copy. This is important. It's not a story. It's just genealogy. It's boring. This so-and-so married so-and-so, had, these kids. Next line, so-and-so married so-and-so, had these kids. For everybody pretty much in the Balkans. If you don't, there's no money to record, to translate it. Nobody's going to pay for that.
Are put together in the same boat. Oftentimes there's interest in historical projects at universities or people that are doing their PhDs because there's some kind of utility behind it. It's not just, conversation or record of words, but there is utility behind understanding Albanian history, whether it comes to the spoken language, the written language, and how it evolved, and how ancient it is, or how easy it makes it for Albanians to be able to learn another language, or when it comes to understanding of how the region evolved and how different tribes arrived.
I'm not big on linguistics because I feel I like an argument that
what you know about the history is really important to someone making ties about linguistics, about architecture in the area, and about how naval academies were built in the area and that transpired throughout the entire Mediterranean. So if you see where I'm going with this, is that you have a puzzle piece to a larger vision. And by contributing to it as much as you can, other people can fill in the blank parts of what they're trying
absolutely.
to
No one person
provide
can do
to.
the whole thing. It has to be a
It's
community
important
effort by
what
lots of
you're
people.
doing because you don't know who is listening and who you're influencing. A mere conversation that you can have in a restaurant can really impact and inspire the waiter or the people sitting next to you who you have no idea were listening to you. So don't think
exactly
conversations that you're having, they're not going somewhere. They definitely are, and they're fueling the evolution of that history being understood and recorded.
Me personally, I've noticed that the more the diaspora have been on like the Wikipedia stuff and in the forums, it's more the diaspora that are really doing research in history. I don't know why that is, but they're actually so history is a science. People don't realize that it's not storytelling. I think a lot of people in the Balkans look at it as storytelling, but
it's all science.
as it's approached in an academic way is
one perspective.
You have to have sources. You have to. It's not like your grandfather told you a story and that's history. No, that's culture. That's part of culture. The history part is then you have to go then find the sources to actually prove that, right? So a lot of historians, when they're doing research, they're not reading books with stories. They're like reading tax records. They're reading like land records. They're reading, the shipping records or like baptismal records, that sort of thing, finding names. And they're not fun stories. It's actually pretty boring stuff. So it takes a certain type of person to really methodically look through 500 pages to find one paragraph that's relevant.
Yeah,
I like that stuff. There's very few people that do.
I use most of the teachings you give me with people online all the time, and I teach them, just a little bit of stuff that you teach me, and they're like blown away, like, "Oh my God, how do you even know this?"
15 years of my life,
yeah, and then I start teaching them a little bit of that, and now it's going on to the next person, and that's why I try to talk to you as much as I can in terms of learning history.
It's totally getting like that article that they put out about Skanderbeg's mom. That took, and that was just they literally stole that article from an Albanian history site that I gave a couple of years ago, and they copied it word, but it's fine. Now it's an article online, and other people will see that information. So it's just frustrating that it takes so long. It's because I know something, I found something, it doesn't just disseminate throughout the world, and then I see the same arguments over and over online between Serbs and Albanians. Like, I handled that problem already. Like, you move on to the next argument. Like, this is done.
Yeah.
And even probably in coffee shops in Albania, they're talking back and forth. Like, you spent hours on the same conversation. You should spend those hours researching or
like I shouldn't have to argue about even George Castrioti being Albanian at all with anybody. Like you just already know. I don't even argue with people anymore at that point for that.
Just send him a text. Just send him, the letter to the Prince in Toronto where he calls himself Albanian. That's it.
True.
Do that.
And Rok, this is not just something that exists in Albanian culture. Throughout the world, people sit in coffee shops debating politics and history. From Peru to Albania to everywhere in the world, really. This is a common thing about human nature. They like to debate something they don't agree with.
But the problem
is when people someone an article and they may read it, but they can't comprehend what you're also, sending them via text. That's also an adaptability issue. But I want to bring the conversation a bit more to a contemporary understanding of Albania today and your relationship with it. So we're going to go into a round where we're going to ask you questions about your connection to Albania. We love this round, and people that watch the show really love it as well. So go ahead. What was your question?
Go for it. Go for it.
So Omar, when was the last time you were in Albania, and where is your favorite place to visit in terms of enjoyment or tourism?
Okay. Last time, I think April 2023, but I spent like 2 weeks in Skodra. My favorite place is Liege Castle, but it's nostalgia for me. I love sitting there on the walls and looking over the city.
Castle of Liege. And why is it significant? Liege.
That's my family's castle.
Okay.
That's
pretty awesome. That's my family. I love that. My family's castle.
Castle, of course. Have you been to the south of Albania?
Yeah.
Where?
Vlora. I've been to Vlora. I actually visited the Vlora family. So their house there. So the Vlora family, very important family. Their story is that their ancestor was Sinan Pasha. They claim a couple different Sinan Pashas. I'm not gonna that's for them to figure out. But their story is Ahmed Pasha, Dukagjinit, that was pregnant on Dukagjinit, married the the Admiral Sudan Pasha, and that they're saying that was their family. So if that's the case, then they have a female member that's actually married in Aleppo. We have a tomb for her.
Interesting.
And so they invited me out there, and I visited the family. But yeah, I've been down to Vlorë. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But I don't know. The north is just better for me. I don't know.
Maybe you haven't explored it with us. We should all go, all three of us, on a trip down to the south, to Ksamil, to Vlorë, to Saranda, and enjoy the sea too. I'm from the south, so maybe we can have a bit of an introduction to the south.
I mean, his roots are the north, so it probably, you know.
I mean, you know, I think I would have relations. The Topoli families from the south, yeah.
You're from Gjirokastër as well. You're not just from the north.
My great grandmother, yeah.
And your great grandmother. Albanians also, like, even though we might say, "Hey, I'm originally from Chamardia, I'm from Nirdita," actually, if you look at the history, you're not just purely from that area. Albanians, okay, we're in one defined territory, but Albanians did marry other Albanians throughout, you know.
I think a lot of the northern Albanians actually were further up north and kind of got pushed down over time with the Slavic invasion.
That's true, with the invasion, and they stayed in that.
Yeah, I think we went from past Montenegro into southern Croatia, and a lot of us had been, because like my DNA is J2B, which is a common one in the north, one of the three, Y DNA, whatever, and they found Illyrian settlements in Dalmatia,
Croatia,
that have the same DNA, J2B. So
it did extend all the way up into Croatia, so that's not unheard of. 100%.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, well, when you talk about Illyria, I think it goes too far back to, you know, to separate a separate modern Albanian identity from it. But I definitely feel like a lot of people in the north were kind of condensed from further up as the Slavs pushed out.
Of the ancient Albanians before, I don't want to call it modern history, but medieval times and
medieval history,
yeah, we did have Illyria. That is what we call our predecessors, or ancient Albania, that today's Albanians have derived from in the region. But just to bring it back to
some, but also some Serbs are going to be Slavofied Illyrians as well. So,
what about your
30% of them are? But anyways,
sorry, no. I don't mean to. I want us to
no, go for it. It's
all the time that we have available, and we might have a part 2, because I see a lot of interest in this conversation, in this topic.
I mean, I could also bring some historians. I know a lot of the historians.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to do a diaspora, history for the diaspora in English, there's a couple of historians I know that know English pretty well.
It would be cool to do a sit-down talk show with him one day, with us all in the future. It would be cool to get an actual studio and be able to talk live forefront with all of us and get some history out the way.
Albanianologists, Albanolog, who are not from Albania. Oftentimes they're foreign, from Germany or the UK, who have studied Albania, and to have them on the same platform as you, to be able to discuss, debate, etc., with us mediating that. But what is your favorite food? What is your favorite Albanian dish? Or dishes, multiple.
Okay, no. So in Syria, people don't realize it, but a lot of the foods are the same, but they're completely different. They taste completely different. So, but in Malaysia, it was a pumpkin burek, and it's not like a regular burek.
My favorite.
That was amazing. Oh my god. But no, Don Finham, he took. I'm friends with, he took me. That guy knows all the good restaurants. He knows all the spots.
I would imagine he's right there.
But everything was good. But yeah, but the pumpkin burek was amazing, and I don't know. It's not like a regular burek. It's
we say pita mekungo or borek mekungo, which is with with pumpkin. That's my favorite.
Yeah, but there's some stuff that I so like what are the leaf. I know what it's called in Arabic, but whatever. Wait, I don't want to speak Arabic.
Say it in Arabic.
The grape leaves, right? The rolled grape leaves.
So
in Syria, they use it's more
dolmas.
Yeah. They use like lemon and not enough. It's more rice than meat, and I hate that. But in Albania, it was more meat than rice, and it wasn't lemony. So now I make it that way. So I learned how to make it the Albanian way.
Yeah.
Okay.
We call it yaprak.
I prefer the Albanian way than the Syrian way.
I love yaprak. It's one of my favorite things, actually. So I'm really happy you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But those pumpkin bureks were I need to figure out how to
Yeah,
make
they're the best.
Omar, make sure to have like 3 different types of pumpkin beer. Like we'll have them from the south, from central Albania, and from the north, and you can decide which one is the best. You're in Cali, do you have any Albanian restaurants out there in LA yet?
No, there's a very small. No, there's a very small Albanian. No, there's no Albanians there. In growing up in school, in high school, there was one set of 2 brothers that were Albanian. That was it. That was it. I have a lot of Croatians here. A lot of Croatians where I'm at. Croatians and Italians and Mexicans is roughly where I'm at. Rock, you know Big T. Big T lives in LA.
Okay.
He comes over
That's
once in a while.
Yeah, I've met a couple of Albanians from California and LA throughout, now doing what I'm doing with my page.
There's not a lot.
But there's not many. There's really not many. It's very small.
Yeah.
I was in California in LA for a very short period of time. And everyone thought I was either Armenian or Persian, which I'm thank you for.
A lot of Armenians and Persians there, yeah.
Actually, Albanian. They're like, what's
big.
that? So,
but I have a lot of Armenian and Persian friends. Yeah, that's LA.
If you could contribute to something in Albania that you think would make a difference to the culture which you were speaking about, or the perspective, what would it be? Would it be something physical, like a project on ground, or something more conceptual?
So I'm actually my trips to Albania have had like a dual purpose. So you mentioned Armenia, right? Armenia has a lot of similar things. After communism in Armenia, most European countries have like an organization for old families, like mobility or whatever, right? So Armenia actually they did that as well. Like not the government, but the old families got together, and there's actually 2 different ones, but like I don't know what we call it. But so I have been going to each of the old families. Like I met with the Laura family, I met with the Toptani family, I've met with the John Markai family in Merdita, I've met with the Begoli family in Peja. I'm missing some. I've met with quite a few, and I've tried to get them at some point in the future. Let's all meet up. It hasn't been done in 100 years. Let's set up an organization.
Would be amazing. Wow, imagine
with all the old Ottoman era and pre-Ottoman. Because I've talked to both branches of the Skanderbeg, the Castorodi Skanderbeg family in Italy, and I wanted to actually include the barractors from or somebody from each north of the fees in the north, each of the tribes, to represent, because I feel a lot of the history is not necessarily being recorded, especially the northern tribes. They each have their own history. There's not a lot of effort to record that stuff, and just an organization that keeps track of individual family histories and the fees histories and the structure. Because the traditional Albanian, that was it. Like the general council, the legal lineage was not called the legal lineage. That was later on. It was just called the general council in Barleti, and that's the League of Prizren. That was the kind of the same thing. Everybody met up, and they decided on stuff, but nobody's met up in 100 years. And I just wanted to get everybody just to meet up for an intro, because a lot of these people, these families, one, I think the sad part is there's no leadership anymore. Like the John Markai family in Merdita, they don't have a capitan. They're supposed to have a capitan. They haven't. Communism messed them up. Like 14 family members were killed in communism. And a lot of these, the fees in the north, they don't have a barractor. Some of them do, some of them don't. A lot of the young people don't know who the barractor is. If you're from the north and you message me and I'm talking to you, somewhere along the line, I'm gonna ask you who your barractor is.
Can you explain what that means for those who don't
know? Your head of your
Bayraktar, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Bayraktar. Okay.
See the pronunciation.
It's fine. You're still
okay. That's why we're here.
Exactly.
Yeah. So a lot of times I'll ask, and a lot of people don't know. So and honestly, if you want to find out, you probably just look on a face. They probably have a Facebook page. And I feel like a lot of younger Albanians don't want to know, because they're supposed to listen to them. They're supposed to listen to their elders. They're supposed to listen to this hierarchy that's been established. And
are you like
it's not political
for the Albanian community? Like if someone, are you like an elder for your family or for the Albanian?
I represent my family, but and the rest of my family knows this because I know the history better and I'm out there.
Okay.
Yeah, but as far as financial stuff, when it comes to the collecting the rent or any this, no. When money involved, no, they're not going to let me decide.
It makes sense in a way, in a very accurate way, why you're so driven to understand, preserve, and evolve the history of not just your lineage, but Albania throughout time and different geographical locations, because it's who you are. It's what your family taught you to do. and to preserve something like culture, which is a very learned activity, to a high regard. And you're doing that with a lot of honor and integrity, and thankfully so, we're able to hear about it. In the future, I would really like to ask you the questions that our viewers are going to have and post on our YouTube channel and on Instagram
so proud of the
about this
internet spacious.
conversation.
Yeah.
That would be excellent. Omar, I know we've had an excellent dialogue and that our time is almost running up for this show, but Rock, I'm going to hand it over to you. Do you have any more questions for Omar?
I don't have any questions. I just I hope we can extend what we're kind of doing here with teaching people history. I think that's my overall goal in life too. I don't feel like my life is complete until everybody in the world knows Albanian history. So I'm kind of on his boat with this, and it's in my goal to be the
Albanian
biggest patriot.
bro. Albanian exceptionalism. Yes.
Omar,
Start using that.
taught us so much, and you've shared a breadth of knowledge on understanding Albanians in the diaspora, Albanians throughout history, during medieval times, before that, during the Ottoman Empire, and communism, post-communism. And I think everyone who views this is going to have a good launching point of where to start learning more, whether they're Albanian or not, but to the contributions that Albanians have had worldwide and what they mean to the general international system and to history. So thank you for that. We're gonna wrap it up today, but Omar, do you have any closing thoughts you want to tell us before we say bye?
Just read. Look, if you have any feelings of like curiosity or like you don't feel the grasp of your culture. I feel like I would say this, but a lot of Albanians, they go around not even believing their own history because they're told other things. We're not gypsies. We had castles, we had armies, we had nobility, we had a huge history across the world. Just read the history. Like I said, there's a ton of stuff online. It's once you read it, you'll realize that you can do. We've done just about anything. Like you can do anything. We're not a marginalized people at all.
No. Thank you, Omar, and thank you, everyone,
Thank you, Omar,
for joining us on another episode of DGXM podcast. We can't wait to bring more great conversations like this to you and your family. See you here next time.
Thank you.
Catch you later.